In this video, we're going to look at creating, accessing, and manipulating arrays. So let's launch into IRB. Now, in another video introducing arrays, we looked at just a basic way to create an array. So to do that, we use the brackets to essentially create an array. Now, I just created X. It's an array now. It doesn't have any elements. I can add some elements to X by a couple different methods. The easiest straight off is just to do this. Now we have one element in there. If I call it with another one, you'll see I have two elements. So that's pretty straightforward how you actually add elements in there and create an array like that. You can create an array straight off by just populating inside your brackets right away. So there's X now with those in there. And you can also call the array class like that. That'll get you an array. This is the same as this up here, but you can also give it a value if you want. So there we have an array with 3 elements in there that have no value. They're nil. But if we put something in here, let's put 5 and put hello in here. No, too many closing brackets there. Now you can see that I have an array with 5 elements, each with hello in here. Now don't fall into the trap of thinking that these are 5 separate objects. They actually are all the same string object, and I can show you that if I do this. Now, this right here, this reference where I put an integer inside the brackets will give me whatever element in here. So this is the 0 element. So these arrays, all arrays, and this is pretty standard for computers in general, arrays start at 0. So that's the first element is 0. And I'm going to tell it to capitalize it. Now let's take a look at X. I should have called the right method. There we go. Sorry about that. So what I did was this returned hello, and that's a trap sometimes people fall into. This actually returns a value, but it doesn't touch the original array, or original object, in this case x0. Whereas if you put this exclamation mark at the end, it's in a lot of methods, it's going to actually modify the original object. So I spaced that out there for a second. Anyway, so we get the object back. X0 gets changed to that capital H hello, but you'll notice so did all the other elements of this array. So that's telling us that these are all the same object, which isn't necessarily what you want. So probably the way to declare this is you can actually use, instead of doing this, you can use a block and set it up. We want the curly braces, and we'll make it the lowercase hello. And now we have that same looking array, but let's call this again, and then let's take a look at X, and you'll notice it's just the first element. So these are individual blocks at that, or sorry, not blocks, individual objects, which are these strings in this case. Now, I used this construct a couple times here. Let's look at a little bit more there. If we call X3, that's going to be the third element. Let me redo X into something that makes more sense here. I'm going to call X3 now. It should be 0, 1, 2, 3. If you remember that, it starts at 0, you won't get into trouble. If you do this, and then we call X3, it's not 3 now. It's going to be 4, because if we're calling this, we start our counting at 0. So this isn't the third element, it's the third element plus 1, and this is a common error a lot of people make, and it's an off by 1 error, and it bites a lot of people. Just remember that. Now, we also have a couple of special methods to get access into our array. This one is first, and it gets us our first object, and then the other one is last, and that gets us our last object. So the one final thing is, if we want to find out how big our array is, we can say size, and that gives us the number of elements in there, and length is going to be the same kind of thing. So these two are essentially the same method call, just a different name, different approach to it. So one last thing, if we can call these this way, we can actually set values. And a lot of times you're going to hear these individual components of an array called an element. So I've changed the fourth element to, I've changed this element, and I've done that using this construct where I use the brackets with an integer telling me what's position I'm changing, and then an assignment operator, and then I just give it something I want to change it to. In this case, I changed it to a string, and you can see it's perfectly happy changing that to a string. So that's manipulating, creating, and accessing arrays.